My story begins in early February 2019 in the early morning hours. Yes, this was a year before the COVID epidemic had hit the world. This year was kind of a new beginning for me. I had moved away from St. Louis, Missouri, which is the state that I was born and raised, and had lived in for some 45 years of my life until a set of unforeseen circumstances caused me to move to Kansas City, Kansas. I was kind of starting my life over at that point, left my job, and as things would work out, I moved in with my mother for a short period of time. Now, what had led me to be in this predicament was admittedly a series of years of bad decisions on my part. Very bad decisions. It was around 7:30 in the morning when I got a text from a young man that I'll call Bubby, and that is his name, Bubby. Bubby is the brother of a young female that I had known for a few years, and this relationship was strictly friendly. Bubby texted me, "Hey, have you heard from my sister?" This text kind of shocked me because I kind of didn't know where he was coming from, but in fact, I had heard from his sister. The night before, as a matter of fact, I had seen his sister. I was out driving around with his sister. Doing what I'll get into in the upcoming minutes, but that's neither here nor there. So I responded to Bobby and said, yeah, I talked to her last night. She dropped me off about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I told her to text me when she got home, but like Bubby, I hadn't heard from her since she dropped me off. Well, after I told Bobby this instantly kind of freaked him out even more. He explained to me through text that the last time he spoke to his sister, let's call her Kim, and that is a totally fictitious name, once again to protect the identity of this person. The last time Bubby had spoken with Kim was about 9:30 the previous night when she told him that she was going to pick me up. I can only imagine at this point what Bubby was thinking of me, but I had hoped that he knew me better than that because I had hung out with him and Kim on numerous occasions, and I hoped that he knew I was not the type of person who would do anything, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. Bobby hadn't spoken to Kim since about 9:30 the previous night, and every time that he had called her phone, it went straight to voicemail, indicating that the phone was either dead or not in her possession, because the one thing that Kim always did was check in with Bubby. He also explained that every time that he texted her, he got no reply. So of course, Bubby asked if I could help him out. I said, sure, no problem. I told Bubby I would give her a call, and I'd text her. And either way, if she responded or didn't respond, I would get back to him and let him know what was going on. So as soon as we hung up, I immediately called Kim's number, and just like Bubby said, it picked up on the first ring, straight to voicemail. A little bit frustrated, I went ahead and sent her a text, and once again, like Bubby said, there was no response. I had to have sent her maybe 10 texts within a span of 5 minutes, because now I'm starting to get a little worried. You see, I had told Kim the night before, or the morning before, a few hours before, about 1:30 a.m., to please text or call me as soon as she made it home. This is a policy I have with anybody, male or female, doesn't matter. But I always want to make sure that people get home safe and sound. And of course, I hadn't heard from him either now that Bubby had mentioned it. Now, of course, a little worried. I figured I probably shouldn't text Bubby back. I should probably call him because I'm a little worried at this point too. So I give Bubby a call and tell him, hey man, I'm getting the same result as you. So Bubby asked me to give him a rundown of what was going on, what time Kim had picked me up, what had transpired, and what time she exactly dropped me off. Questions that any worried brother would ask if he hadn't heard from her sister for a few hours. And questions that any worried brother would ask the last person that he knew of that spoke to his sister. So I kind of felt interrogated, but I could totally put myself in his place as I would do the same thing. After giving Bubby the details of the night before, Bubby was satisfied, without letting me know he was satisfied, that I wasn't in on any reason why she wouldn't be calling or responding or getting in touch with him at this point. That's when Bubby informed me that he would go ahead and contact all the local police stations, all the local hospitals, and any of the friends that he knew of hers that she was in contact with. I said, great. As soon as you hear anything, if you hear anything, if you don't hear anything, please do me a favor and just let me know. Bubby agreed, and we hung up, and that began the story that I'm going to tell you. Before I began this story, I put out a short disclaimer explaining that for a few years, I had made a series of very bad decisions. These decisions put me in very bad predicaments. Now, through the grace of God, or whatever you want to call it, I got out of most of these predicaments. This was one of those times where the poor decisions I made put me in a spot that resulted in a story. About 8:30 the previous evening, I had called Kim, looking to get into the things that I was into at that period of my life. Now, I want to refer to that in those such terms. I'm going to let your imagination take you where it wants to, but with any common sense, you will know exactly what I'm referring to. Yet still, I won't come out and say it. Anyway, Kim knew a lot of people, and Kim could get things, so I called Kim about 8:30 previous evening, asking if she could find what I had wanted her to find for me. She texted me back and said she certainly could, and that she knew someone that could help me out. She offered to pick me up because, as I said, I was starting my life over, basically, and she offered me a ride. About 9:15 rolls around and Kim picks me up. She explains to me that her ex-boyfriend was the one that she would be seeing about what I wanted, and that she just wanted to pick me up because she didn't want to drive out to his house by herself. It was a long drive. She was tired. So I was basically there just to keep her company, but she was going to drive to where he was to get what I had asked her to get. So we're driving, and about 15 minutes in the car after a few things of conversation, we pull into a hotel. As we pull in the parking lot, immediately whips out her phone and begins texting. She explains to me that she's texting my boyfriend who's in the hotel and letting him know that we've arrived. I said, cool. Now I'm excited a little bit because I'm going to get what I had asked for. We're sitting in the hotel parking lot for about what seemed like a half hour. Well, it was probably only 10 minutes, but still 10 minutes sitting in the hotel parking lot. Kind of boring, kind of frustrating after a while, but as is the case when you're in the lifestyle I was in at the time, you kind of don't mind, or at the time it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal because ultimately you're going to get what you want. So anyway, after 10 minutes or so, out walks Kim's boyfriend, Tony. Tony is the real name of this person. But Tony isn't alone. Tony has another female with him. Being new to the Kansas City area, I didn't know Tony, and I didn't certainly know the female who he was with. The only people I actually knew was my mom, my brother, because they lived in Kansas, Heather, and her brother Bubby. So Tony gets in the back seat with this female, and as they get in, you know how you kind of sideways shift your body, and that's what I did. I kind of sideways shifted my body and took a look in the back. I noticed that the female instantly put her head down and didn't look at me. Tony, though, he's talking away. It was apparent that Tony and Kim had known each other for some time because he instantly said, hey, what's up to her? He respectfully said, hey, what's up to me? But after that initial greeting, Tony instantly starts talking with Kim. Now here I am the whole time, just kind of waiting to get what I had asked for, but Tony explained to Kim that he would have to be driven somewhere else. That someone else, that other person, had it. Or so I thought. Kim instantly starts talking about gas money and how she's going to make it there and she hadn't have the money for this. And now Tony appears a little frustrated and he instantly states, girl, you know I got you, you know, I'm always getting money. Anything you need, I'll pay you back in the gas. But you got to take me to this location first so I can get the money, blah, 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 blah. They're going back and forth for a few minutes and finally Kim leaves the parking lot. All along, arguing with Tony about taking him to this other place that he needs to go. As these two are arguing, I shoot a few glances in the rearview mirror in the back seat to kind of see the expression of Tony's face because I can tell that he's getting a little more aggravated and so is Kim. So I take a glance in the rearview mirror a few times and kind of shoot the eyes, or hope to shoot the eyes at the girl to show that I'm getting a little frustrated by this whole argument thing. And every time I glance in the rearview mirror, I notice her head is still down. She hasn't made a peep the whole time. Not a big deal, because, like I said, I didn't know them, and they certainly didn't know me. As I explained earlier, I was new to Kansas. And Tony needed to go to St. Joseph, Missouri. Me being new to Kansas, I had no idea how close or how far this was to our relative location at the time. But as they kept arguing and the argument got louder, I asked Kim, well, how far is St. Joe? And she looks at me and kind of in a loud voice says, about 2 hours fucking away. I instantly knew why Kim was upset. She didn't want to have to drive 2 hours. And in hindsight, Tony always made it a habit of getting Kim to drive him places, saying that he would pay her back for gas and would never pay. I didn't know that at the time, but I've come to find that out later. So now I'm at a crossroads while these two are arguing at this point at the top of their lungs, yelling at each other while Kim is driving on the highway. I have to make a choice. Now, what I wanted wasn't that huge of a thing, but it was something at the time that I needed. Or I thought I needed. 2 hours, man. That's one heck of a drive. So I look over to Kim and I say, hey, why don't you just go ahead and drop me off as we were still close to where I was staying at. Why don't you drop me off, Kim? Drive him out to where he needs to go. Let him get what he needs to get. And then on the way back to your house, stop by my house and drop off to me what I initially wanted in the first place. Well, rightfully so. Kim said that she really just didn't want to have to make that drive without me in the car. She felt more comfortable with me in the car. She was arguing with this idiot Tony in the back seat. And this young lady or this woman that he was with hadn't said a word the whole time. And so she just felt like maybe it would just escalate between those two. And she basically just wanted me to take the ride with her. Once again, I'm at a crossroads. I have a decision to make. So we're about 10 minutes on the highway, and these two are literally still going at it. I mean, now it's at the top of their lungs. He's barking at her from the back seat. She's barking at him from the driver's side. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, eyes rolling, really frustrated. And once again, every time I glanced in the rear view mirror to get some sense of the woman in the back seat being just as frustrated as I am, every glance I give, her head is still down. She hasn't moved. And she basically hasn't said a word. If I didn't know any better, I'd think she was sleeping, but she was not asleep. And like a ton of bricks, I was hit with this undeniable feeling that something was wrong and I needed to go. My gut told me, no matter what, I had to get out of this car. So I immediately look over at Kim and tell her to take me home. Of course, she looks at me in amazement. She looks dumbfounded and says, take you home? Well, don't you want blah, 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 blah? And I said, no. I need you to turn around, go the opposite way, and take me back home. This immediately pissed Tony off. He starts talking to me and saying, man, we're over a half hour into this drive and we're only about an hour and 20 minutes away from where I need to go now. And now you want to leave, now you're ready to go home. This is going to set me back. I looked Tony in the eye and I very calmly said to him, I don't give a fuck. I'm going home. Tony looked at me and said, alright, I'm sorry, my bad. Go ahead and run him home real quick, Kim. Kim stared over at me with a worried look in her eyes. But thankfully she got off at the nearest exit and started heading the other way down the highway to take me home. On that 20-minute ride to dropping me off, I did take glances in the rearview mirror, and once again, every single time, this lady never looked up, never said a word, never did anything. As we pull up to my mom's house, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning by this time. As I get one leg out of the passenger door, I say to Kim, text or call me as soon as you get back home. She said she would. I told her to be careful, and I got out. Walking from her car to the front door of my mom's house, I was pissed because I didn't get what I wanted. Everything that transpired, those two arguing with each other at the top of their lungs, and the female that was in the back seat that never looked up, never said a word. I went ahead and did my thing to get ready for bed. I laid down, went to sleep, and I was awoken the next morning about 9:30 by Bubby. The time is now 11 a.m. and I get a follow-up text from Bubby. The text reads, "Hey Barrett, I found Kim. She's been arrested. She's at the Shawnee Police Department." Needless to say, I was shocked. I wanted to know what happened. I responded, and Bubby texted me back and said, "I don't know all the details. I couldn't talk to her." But the officer I talked to said that they will be releasing her at noon. He explained to me that the reason she hadn't answered her phone was because the police had confiscated it. Around 12:05, I pull into the Shawnee Police Station parking lot, park the car, and go inside and ask if they're holding someone by the name of Kim. After looking her name, first and last name, up, they tell me that she's being held actually at the Lenexa Police Department, and I need to go there to pick her up. I drive another 10 minutes to the Lenexa Police Department, park the car, walk in, and I immediately see Kim in the waiting area. Once Kim sees me, she stands up and bursts into tears, hysterics almost, but she's crying profusely. I give her a quick hug, and we walk back to the car. There, Kim tells me a story that shakes me to the core. Kim tells me that after dropping me off about 1:15 in the morning, her, Tony, and the female in the back seat continue their trip to St. Joseph, Missouri. They make it there fine. It was another hotel. Kim tells me that when she pulls in the parking lot, Tony and the female get out, go inside the hotel, and leave her in the parking lot again for about a half hour. As Kim is sitting in the car, she tells me she's blowing Tony's phone up, but he never responds. She calls him repeatedly, texts him repeatedly, but Tony never responded. After about a half hour, Tony and the unknown female get back in the car. Tony explains to Kim that the guy that was supposed to be there wasn't there, and asks him to take him back to the original hotel that Kim and I originally picked Tony and the female up from. As Kim pulls back into the hotel to drop Tony and the female off, she's instantly sworn behind by 4 Lenexa Police Department cruisers. They ask them both to get out of the car, and they immediately separate Kim, Tony, and this unknown female that was in the back. Kim tells me that they're standing outside for over an hour talking to, at first, 5 separate police in 5 separate police cruisers. She told me that it eventually grew from 5 to 10 police cruisers. And as they have them separated, a few female cops are talking to Kim and the unknown female, and the male cops are talking to Tony. Kim told me that the police had confiscated her phone and that they refused to give it back at the police station. After being questioned in the parking lot of this hotel for over an hour, all 3 of them, Kim was arrested, along with Tony. Kim had been arrested and charged as an accessory. Tony, on the other hand, you see, Tony was arrested for human trafficking.
Town St. Joseph. You're watching News Press Now.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight for News Press Now. I'm Charles Christian.
And I'm Morgan Doyle. A Kansas man will serve more than a decade in federal prison after he abused a St. Joseph girl, age 16, at the time of his offenses.
Antonio Fleming, a 40-year-old from Shawnee in the Kansas City area, drove to St. Joseph in early 2019. He recruited the girl for what she believed would be work as a masseuse. Prosecutors say Fleming planned to coerce her into work as a prostitute. One of his victims told police Fleming made her see his clients 5 to 6 times per week, all for money he collected. Fleming is now sentenced to 13 years without parole and must register for life as a sex offender.
It turns out that the young woman in the back seat was a 15-year-old girl who Tony had met online a few months prior. Tony had been grooming her since the day he met her. First, he would start dating these young ladies, and then he would talk about how he had certain fetishes of seeing the women with other men. After about a month or so of this, that fetish soon turned into full-blown tricking. And these women quickly found themselves into performing services for gentlemen. All under the manipulative, watchful eye of Tony. That night was the end of the line for Tony. And as the new reports state, he was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison for human trafficking. But I will never forget the night that my selfish needs and slightly reckless lifestyle lead me to spend an hour in the car with a human trafficker. I'd like to thank you for listening to Storytime in Prime Time. And if you don't mind, please hit the like button, subscribe button, and comment below if you'd like. Until next time, keep living life in prime time. And most of all, please be careful out there.